My trailer begins with diegetic laughter on a black screen, which immediately connects the audience with the character, but also confuses them, as at this point they have no idea of the film genre, plot, and so on. I use captions which read, "Reality isn't always real." This again is intended to confuse and intrigue the audience, and until the end of the trailer they won't understand its meaning. I used captions instead of a voiceover, as I thought I already had enough auditory stimulation with my soundtrack and the other diegetic sounds I use later on. On the second caption, the music fades in with a heavy, slow drum beat, which I used to contrast with the faster pace of the editing. I chose "Everything Will Be Alright" by The Killers as the lyrics juxtaposed with the content of my trailer, as everything is clearly not alright. However, it also gives the audience hope that the resolution of the film will be a happy one, which is much more encouraging than advertising a film which is all doom and gloom and has no light or hopeful moments. The first shot of the trailer fades into a sped-up long shot of Kate, my protagonist, standing still in a shopping centre whilst people whiz past her. I intended to show how in her life she seems to be standing still, whilst the world carries on, whilst people pass her by. This shot is also intended to demonstrate how reality and perception can be altered by using drugs. The transition into the next shot is a jumpy, flickering cut, which I achieved by overlaying the two shots and cutting out small bits of one. Again, this is meant to add to the sense of tripping, almost as if someone, perhaps the protagonist, is blinking, as if this whole trailer is a reel of her thoughts and memories. The camera pans to show Kate and her friends after a house party. I staged the set with sweets, alcohol and drugs, and I wanted to show Kate's isolation, as she is the only one still awake or conscious, and still drinking. The transition flickers back into the time-lapse shot, but this time for a shorter take. I used the flickering again to cut to a shot of Kate in a white room as part of her hallucination. The shot flickers back to the time-lapse again for an even shorter take, and then back to the white room with a close-up of Kate looking at the light. The reflection caused almost distorts the image, and I would have liked to distort the shot even more to make it clearer that this is a hallucination. The shot flickers back to the time-lapse, and flickers again into a close-up of Kate in a bathroom, partially obscured by a sink. I asked the actress to wear dark clothes so that the shot seems more dreary and dull, and her makeup is smudged to show that she's been crying. This flickers back to the time-lapse, but only for a couple of seconds, before flickering to a close-up of Kate's hands cutting the drugs. The camera then pans around to show a different angle. I sped this up to make it seem jumpy and unreal, so that adds to the sense of chaos I was trying to create. I used straight cuts from here to speed up the pace of the editing further, so that the end shots with longer takes have more of an impact. In this shot, Kate is in the bathroom again, but this time she is laughing. I added diegetic laughter to make her sound more real, but the laugh almost sounds like a cry, and her makeup is smudged. I sped up the shot of her laughing, as I wanted to create a sense that even though she is laughing, there is still something wrong. As the soundtrack goes into the chorus, I wanted the shots to really juxtapose with the lyrics. I used a tilt shot of Kate fighting with her father, but I cut it with other shots to increase the pace and frenzy. I used a shot of Kate cutting the drugs. Again, her clothing is dark and dreary. This shot cuts into the fight scene again, but only shows a glimpse of it before cutting to a shot of a couch where Kate suddenly pops onto it out of nowhere, laughing and bleeding before disappearing again. I use this again to play with reality and hint at hallucinations. The bleeding nose also points towards abuse, and the image of her laughing whilst bleeding and in pain is, hopefully, quite disturbing and memorable for my audience. I cut back to the fight scene where Kate's dad hits her, just as the song says, "Everything will be alright." Next, there is a slightly happier scene to show a different side of the character. However, she is still drinking and there are drugs around her and her friends, suggesting this is a false and fleeting happiness. The shot cuts back to the fight scene very briefly, but only shows her dad's back and his face is never seen in the trailer. I wanted this to intrigue the audience, as they would be unsure who her abuser is, and it makes him more sinister, as he is anonymous. I used a long shot of Kate and her friends at the party to show the chaos that drugs and alcohol can cause. With this high-angle close-up of Kate in the bathroom, I wanted her to seem small and insignificant, and as the sink obscures her, she also seems distant, and her emotions aren't available to the audience. I used this shot to again illustrate abuse, but I wanted it to be slightly emotionless, as the character isn't in the shot and the setting to seem cold and sterile. I used a zoom on this close-up of Kate, as this shows the importance of her laughing and being happy, and the zoom physically brings the audience closer to this. Again, this shot is devoid of emotion, with only the drugs and alcohol bottles visible. I wanted all of these shots to give the audience tiny pieces of information as the trailer builds to a climax. I used a close-up of Kate's hands covered in white powder, shaking, as again this shot is removed of emotion and only shows a piece of the picture, and not the whole. I wanted the brightly coloured tablecloth to seem garish and out of place against the paleness of her hands. This shot is off-centre as the light is not the focus, yet it creates reflections across the whole of the shot. I wanted this to be ambiguous, as it could be interpreted as part of a hallucination or as the first thing Kate sees after she regains consciousness. I wanted this final shot of the sequence to catch the audience out, as I have been steadily building the pace of the editing, and this take is much longer and therefore allows the audience to focus more on it and realise what all the pieces are building up to. There is the continuity of the mise-en-scène from the party, and here it is unclear if Kate is unconscious or dead. I asked the actress to wear a bright yellow top, as it is eye-catching and cheery in a garish way. I also created a shadow so that it seems as if someone is standing over her, watching her, and I hope this will create a sinister and chilling shot. I faded the shot into a black screen, as it made it seem as if the whole shot was being swallowed by the shadow. I again used the line reality, but continued it into the movie's tagline, reality is something you have to survive. I wanted this message to stay in the audience's head and make them think that they are coming to see a film about survival, about living, rather than a film about abuse and drugs. I faded in some diegetic breathing and whimpering at this point to try and connect the audience with Kate and make them feel worried for her, as the screen is still black and they don't know what could be happening. As the music begins to fade, the breathing gets louder and really puts the focus on Kate. The shot fades into a close-up of her as she opens her eyes, and then she looks directly at the camera and at the audience. Again, I wanted to use this to pull the audience in and to connect them with Kate, almost as if she's imploring them for help. The music continues to fade whilst the sobbing and breathing gets louder. I used an independent film award here as I thought it would be more appropriate for my genre than putting quotes from film reviews, and along with the titles at the end it makes the trailer seem more real and professional. I used this shot for my title as I thought it created continuity with the rest of my trailer, and the flashing light could also connote danger, and I thought this would have had more impact than text on a black screen.